How do you take notes? I've had notebooks, binders, A4 sheets of paper, I've had tablets, I've had all sorts of different things. But you know what's funny? No one ever taught me what's the best way for note taking. What's the most effective way to note take? Should I use a notebook? A binder? A computer? Before anything else, let me tell you that there's a very big difference between taking notes and paying attention to what's being said in class. You could be taking notes, but you could be totally zoned out. First of all, there is no one way that you should be taking notes. You could use keywords, you could use mind maps, flowcharts, whatever your heart desires and whatever you feel like it's working for you. You can type them out, you can handwrite them, but at the end of the day, what's really important is that you're taking notes that are going to be useful to you later on. The question isn't about using a notebook or using a binder. The question is about, are your notes helping you out? Because if they're not, and they're just things that you do in class because you kind of have to, well, it's time to regroup. If you do want to know my own current way to take notes, that's a couple things. One, I go from, depending on the class, I will type out stuff. So using my computer, if it's coding, or if it's something that I feel like I can use videos and I can drop them out, and so and so and so. I use my computer and I use Notion. I've talked about Notion in our time management course, which by the way is a very, very interesting tool. You can make pages inside pages, you can move them around, you can do all sorts of different things. I use it from my budget to my planner to my calendar and so on. But on the other hand, there are other classes that I prefer to do mind maps and I handwrite them with an iPad. Over the years though, I have gone from, I made a list and I'm gonna read it out to you because I've gone through so many of them. OneNote by Microsoft, notebooks from Walmart, binders, A4 sheets of paper, and those I would put inside, you know, those sheet protectors. So I would have like a binder and then I would have the A4 sheets of paper and I would go through them and they would be mind maps. I use that a lot for history. Now remember, these are just the tools for you to take the notes. This course is going to teach you a lot about how to take these notes. These are just the tools that you're taking those notes on. The strategies will come in different videos. Now, how do you focus on the class? Well, here's the thing. For you to focus on the class, you have to make it more engaging for your brain. For this reason, don't take notes so you have the material later. Take notes to engage in the class. So as you're taking the notes, do more. Write down your thought process. Write down the connections that come to your head. Oh, this reminds me of class Y. Write down your questions. Write down what the professor is saying. Sometimes the answers to test questions are given in class when the professor is speaking. And another thing is, I remember this very clearly in history. The professor would write down event A and then leads to event B, that leads to event C. However, there were always things in between. So from a war to another, there were other things. So like, you know, this empire starts to break down because of poverty and this, and this. So they raised taxes, and raising taxes was the reason for this other people to go against them and be rebels. Now, what was the reason for the second war? Well, raising taxes. But you know, this wouldn't be in that initial summary by the professor. You would only have the major events, but now you have what's happening in between. That's what I mean. And then if you think of this, raising taxes, and then you have some connection to economics, and then you have some connection to sociology, gosh, I don't care. Make those connections. You want to be engaged, and the way to be engaged is to engage. So this trick alone already will change your life. And then just to expand on that, I remember that during my junior and senior years of high school in Brazil, I would take these A4 sheets of paper and I would do mind maps in them. But then I remember I would take only 3 pens. The black pen was for whatever was on the board and the major ideas. So even though the professor would write down chronologically and linearly, I would do my mind map in the story, and even sometimes even some stupid drawings in black. And then in blue, I would write my own thoughts, my own ideas, and then in red, the side comments that the professor would make between events. So I knew what was what during the class. And sometimes I would even know, put the hey, like the black is gonna be the board, the blue is my thoughts, and the red is the thoughts from the professor, just so I remember what it was. But do you see where I'm going? The note-taking process should be a lot more engaging than probably what you're doing. Don't ever take notes just trying to write down what's on the board. If you're doing that, you're likely not engaged at all. So now if you're thinking again, think of this history example with the pens that I just explained to you and the side comments and whatever is going between events. If you're using this process for every class that you possibly can, I promise you, your notes are going to be a lot richer. Now, what do you do with your notes afterwards? Look, there are very few people that can just go to class, listen to class, look at the notes once, and they can ace an exam. I'm definitely not one of those. Usually, the note-taking is just the first step for you to be learning. Long story short, the better your notes, the less time you're gonna have to spend later on trying to remember what you wrote, what you were talking about, what was the reason for event or whatever solution X. Another example real quick, in math, sometimes instead of just doing the solution from the problem, see how the professor approached it. Maybe she was like, hey, first I calculated the radius of whatever, and then I calculated the area of whatever, and then I used formula Y for whatever. Well, step 1, radius. Step 2, area. Step 3, formula. Those usually help a ton as well. Warning, copying PowerPoint slides do not help in memorization because it is a passive process. Also, if your professor is going to make those slides available later, do not, I repeat, do not write what's already written there. Spend your time writing what really matters, the logic, the concepts, the questions, etc. Cool? If anything, consult your doctor.